here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. May 10th, 2024, Friday. Have about 38 minutes here to the open. Just gonna be really quick, talk about some of the names I always talk about the markets, and go from there. But yeah, take a look at the S&P, up 6 sessions in a row. The Dow is up every single day in May, and the used to every every year used to be the mantra, right? Sell in May and go away. Who knows if it could still happen, but certainly things are setting up with that dovish or somewhat less than hawkish spin by Powell on Wednesday, then the weaker than expected jobs report, and then next week on the 15th we have the CPI data, which will be much anticipated. Can't wait for all the headlines this coming week. But needless to say, SPY came up and pretty much closed right at the upper Bollinger Band, closed at 520.17. Upper Bollinger Band is at 520. 34, sorry. So maybe some chop here today. I mean, we're down up to 522 in the pre-market, sitting here at 521.40. So maybe some chop in between that. But I'll take over a 518.50 close, considering where we started the week and where we were the week before. Also, yeah, take a look at the Dow. I think, did I mention yesterday? I forget where I posted it, but it's just comical that the Dow, it's such a like an archaic index, because you look at some of the names, and United Healthcare, and I think it was Nike, had some massive moves a couple weeks ago. The S&P and NASDAQ had sold off that week, and the Dow was up just because those two names have such a large weighting in the index. Just doesn't really make sense, but they continue to use it. It's almost like the king and queen of England, right? And all these countries that still are under the crown, but rants for other days. Last but not least, another positive sign here. The amount of stocks over their 50-day moving average, 57% of the S&P is now over its 50-day moving average and trending in the right direction. So good stuff. All right, individual names. Let me get into first Trupanion. I was watching the after-hours session. All of a sudden, 25 is going through, 26 is not a lot of volume, but the bid was going up in lockstep. So I figured there had to be something, whether it be some news, an upgrade. And it turns out, someone shared it on FinTwit, and then I was able to look at the SEC filing, that Rawlings, the founder of Trupanion, added 500,000 shares at $24 on May 7th. I mean, that's there's not a lot of bullish news that I think could really move the stock. That's, I think, one of them. That might be one of the top two. A beat and a raise, or some kind of pre-announcement, raised guidance, things like that, I think would be number one. Just a great sign. So, he's talked about, and if you look at their shareholder letter, he had talked about selling. He had a 10.5B1 plan where he had pre-planned sales, which any smart leader of a publicly traded company should have. If you have a lot of shares, you should have a plan with your accountant and your financial advisor, whatever, to set up a plan that you're going to sell so many shares of stock every 3 months, right? So that's what he's been doing, and everybody's been harping on him. Now he's stepping back from the company, and then all of a sudden he comes out and he buys stock. I think there's not much better news than that Trupanion shareholders could get than him doing that. The irony, and I don't know how many months ago, I'm going to have to go back and find the actual earnings, that an analyst came on the call and asked Rawlings why there are no insiders buying the stock, because they should think the stock is undervalued. Like, to me, if you're an analyst, your job is fundamentals, growth, the market, total addressable market, competitors. Your job is not to wonder why insiders aren't buying stock. Like, every insider, directors, what have you, they all have their own financial situations, their goals, a financial advisor, maybe the other stocks they want to get in. Just because you're a director or a part of that doesn't mean you should be buying the stock, right? Your job is not to value the company. Your job is to execute, to create shareholder value. Anyway, so I found it kind of comical. And now finally, it's almost like he's given that analyst a finger and saying, hey, look, I just bought 500,000 in stock. There you go. So I think it trades into the 27th today. I might look for some June strikes to play for a move over $30. Like I said, last week, their earnings, I thought it was a great earnings. The only thing they had was a sequential decline in pet ads for their insurance business, but it's because of the third-party side of things, not their core Trupanion business. So, of course, the bears spin it. Oh, it's their first decline, but it's really not. And they have over a million pets insured. Like I said before, that the bears think it's a zero. The only way it gets to zero is if every 1 million pets all at the same quarter decide to file a claim. And then maybe there might be some possibility of of some liquidity issues, but they have over $200 million backstop for that. And I think there's some, and I shouldn't be ranting too much because I have other names to talk about, but I think there's other possible forward catalysts. The insurance industry has regulations. Those regulations say you need to have certain amount of capital set aside to pay claims. Humans and pets are totally different in regards to insurance. So it costs different amounts of money. When you go to the hospital as a human, it was a couple 10 you can go to the hospital and have an overnight stay. It costs you $10,000, and 99.8% of that's covered by your insurance, depending on what your insurance company is. When you're a pet, you stay overnight at a vet, maybe it's a $600 overnight stay, but they require the same capital backstopping as if they were humans, right? So that, how does that make sense? So at some point, the regulatory folks who overlooked all this stuff should say, wow, pet insurance companies should not be required to hold as much capital on the back end. So that's where that's at. So that's Trupanion. Dell, those are my trend lines I had. I updated them. Barely closing green yesterday. I think at some point it's 140 in the coming week or two. It's sitting here 133. Still have some spec calls. Hopefully it yesterday broke out of the gate and then kind of pulled back. Hopefully today it breaks out of the gate, keeps going over that 135 handle. Really love Dell, especially in the coming weeks. I'll look for some calls to encompass earnings in June. RILY, I added some RILY strikes at the end of the day yesterday. If there was any news that you would think that a bear would want to hear from RILY, is that they're going to report earnings, but not come out with their 10Q, because they did their 10K, which is the yearly filing. Now they're going to do their quarterly report coming up on May 15th, and they just reported that their 10Q is going to be late. So they're going to report their top line numbers, all the revenues and profits, all the P&L, but it's not going to be in a detailed filing with the SEC via a 10Q, which you would think would be bearish if you're a bear. So the stock sold off at the pre-market. It was in the red for the morning, hit 30.61 or so, and then boom, it just reversed and then closed pretty much at highs. I think that's kind of a sign that the bears are, I wouldn't say they're out of ammo, but they're maybe there's some more squeeze to this. So added some spec calls. If there's strength today, I might look for some 40 strikes just to play for a squeeze into earnings next week. It's funny. Some of the folks who are bearish RILY are bullish Overstock, and I loved Overstock. I've traded it here and there. Great story, but they reported earnings. It was a miss. It was like 300. They did like $380 million in revenues, but they lost like $70 million. Anyway, needless to say, the stock sold off. But a lot of the people who are bullish, all the folks who are bearish RILY are bullish Overstock. So not only that, they're bearish Trupanion. So all these forces are kind of saying, hey, maybe they're going to cover. And when I say cover their short in Trupanion, which has a 40% short interest, cover more in RILY, which the short interest has actually come down, but there's still 9 million shares sold short on a 16 million float. So thought process there. Don't be surprised if I add more calls there on RILY. Fiverr, I outlined on the watch list yesterday morning. Great earnings. And you take a look at the stock churning between 19 and 20, announced a buyback a couple weeks ago. And now it looks like what was supposedly going to be a headwind for Fiverr is going to be a tailwind. The AI boom. Folks are going to need to utilize creators and programmers and things like that to be able to take advantage of what's going on with ChatGPT and all those other platforms. They listed 10, or at least they noted in their earnings, over 10,000 gigs are available for AI. I just think it's a tailwind. You take where Fiverr was, even just back in February, it was over $30. Not saying it gets to $30 in the next couple days, but I do think, it's back over its 50-day moving average, which was 21.15. I think it heads 24.25 at least. And the 50 days, the 200-day moving average is 24.99. So that's kind of the short-term target. And I think that's about it. VKTX, I posted, or at least I retweeted a nice tweet from someone who was talking about the MASH. They call it MASH now. It used to be NASH. Opportunity for VKTX. And, I used the comparison between MDGL, which is the first NASH solution on the market. And they just finally FDA approved and finally start getting some revenues. And VKTX is still in earlier studies, so it's still got a couple years to market. So that's why it's not being valued as much as it should be. But their solution looks to be almost a better drug than MDGL. And MDGL has what, a $4 billion market cap. I have to look at the exact where it is today, but that is not anywhere baked into the VKTX market valuation. It's closed over 80. So VKTX closed over 80 for the first time since March. I think it heads to the 90s in the coming week or two, and then into the hundreds, pending any M&A or their phase 2 data from ASH, which should be out in the next 6 weeks. Still looking for some strikes. They're expensive to go further out, so I'll continue to look for opportunities to play VKTX. And I think that's it, folks. Hopefully we have a great day today. Markets hold their ground. Other names I'm looking at, Roku, which still some strikes there. Hopefully that starts to get into the mid 60s, and then maybe I'll look for some June calls. IIPR, which fell after their, I guess, a slight miss in their revenues. I guess a little disappointment, but it looks to be bouncing with some of the other cannabis names today. Hopefully that finds footing, gets back over 110 in the next day or two, and then starts to head to 120. And that's about it, folks. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.